An Iranian nuclear weapon is totally unacceptable, and all options are on the table to include the use of U.S. military force to make sure that doesn't happen. That's the message coming out of Washington today from National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Presidential Advisor Steve Witkoff, which actually clears the air a little bit over some mixed signals this last week. See, Witkoff went on the Tucker Carlson show, and we've talked about some of the comments he made around the war in Ukraine, but there were some other aspects here talking about Iran that were confusing. I mean, this is a pretty pro-Israel, hawkish towards Iran administration. We've had a lot of threats issued against Iran just in the last couple of weeks coming directly from the president. So when Witkoff suggested, hey, maybe a monitoring program could be in line for Iran, it did rub some people the wrong way. Here, give that a listen.
And why did he write that letter?
For people who aren't aware of the letter, can you just roughly describe what it said?
It roughly said, I'm a president of peace. That's what I want. There's no reason for us to do this militarily. We should talk. We should clear up the misconceptions. We should create a verification program so that nobody worries about weaponization of your nuclear material. And I'd like to get us to that place because the alternative is not a very good alternative. That's a rough encapsulation of what was said.
So I saw some pushback online, and I imagine people were pretty quick to jump into Witkoff and say, hey, you got to set the record straight here. And he did today on some Sunday shows we'll talk to here in a second. But later in this conversation with Carlson, he actually hit on something that I thought was worth talking about, where he kind of suggests that, the reason that the United States and Iran can't get along is just, we got these sanctions on them. If we could just do away with those sanctions and bring them back into the international community, everything would be good. Here, give this a listen, and we'll come back to this in a second.
I think the president has acknowledged that that he's open to an opportunity to clean it all up with Iran, where they come back to the world and be a great nation once again, and not have to be sanctioned, and being able to grow their economy. Their economy, I mean, these are very smart people. Their economy was once a wonderful economy. They're being strangled and suffocated today. There's no need for that to happen. They can join the League of Nations, and we can have a better relationship and grow that relationship. And that's what he's presenting. That's the alternative he's presenting.
So I'm sure there's a term for this. A part of me wants to say like victim blaming, but that's not right. But it's this idea, and we see it with relations with Russia as well, where it's this idea that if only we were better friends, then they wouldn't be enemies. And I think in a perfect world, sure, I have a hard time believing Russia hasn't liked us for a long time. Long time. It has nothing, did not start in 2022 when they went into Ukraine. Iran has not liked us for a long time. It didn't start when Trump was elected this time around. So I'm personally skeptical that if we're just nicer to the people that hate us, they won't hate us as much. But it does seem to be a bit of a thread right now in a lot of our foreign policy. Whether or not that actually comes to fruition, different story. Now, Witkoff, I think, did get a little pushback here on this idea of maybe just a monitoring program would do the trick. So we had National Security Advisor Mike Waltz on Face the Nation earlier today, and he was asked this exact question, like, hey, can you clarify this real quick? Here, give it a listen.
Can you clarify, is the U.S. seeking the dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program or verification like what President Obama put in place back in 2015 and President Trump pulled out of?
Full dismantlement. Okay. Iran has to give up its program in a way that the entire world can see. And this is, look, as President Trump has said, this is coming to a head. All options are on the table. And it is time for Iran to walk away completely from its desire to have a nuclear weapon. And they will not and cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapons program. That's enrichment, to the that is weaponization, and that it's strategic missile program. Can you only imagine? We've seen the death and destruction that they're doing through its proxies between Hezbollah, the Assad regime, the Houthis, and what have you. If they had nuclear weapons, the entire Middle East would explode in an arms race. That is completely unacceptable to our national security. I won't get into what the back and forth has been, but Iran is in the worst place it has been from its own national security since 1979. thanks to Hezbollah, Hamas, the Assad regime, and its own air defenses being taken out by the Israelis.
So there's still a chance for diplomacy. I know you don't want to get into
Of course. I mean, the president has all options on the table, but we want to be clear. This isn't some kind of, kind of tit for tat that we had under the Obama administration or Biden. This is the full program. Give it up or there'll be consequences.
All right. So to me, at least, that's a little more clear cut. Like, that is the line that the United States is drawing. And it sounds like President Trump sent a letter recently talking about there's a period of time here where we can work through some sort of negotiations. But this is the end state. This is the hard line the United States is drawing. Like it or dislike it, it seems to be that is the place where we are demanding, essentially, that Iran gets to. Probably not in the next 2 months, but as these negotiations move forward. And there's a lot of countries around the world I know feel the same way. I know Israel feels the same way when it comes to this one. But in this conversation about full dismantlement or some sort of monitoring program, we actually saw Steve Witkoff back on Sunday shows today, and you can see that at the last second in this clip, he goes, actually, let me set the record straight on that one. Here, give this a listen.
About Iran, the president has sent a letter to the supreme leader there giving a timetable for negotiations over their nuke program. 2 months. What happens if you get to the end of the 2 months without progress?
Well, this follows exactly the talking points that me and you have just gone over in Russia, Ukraine, in the Middle East, and now Iran. Again, our direction, the president made a very, very big move in my view. It was to reach out to Iran. There are many out there who would have thought that Iran, in their position, would have reached out to us. But we weren't waiting, and it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. We don't need to solve everything militarily. It's not to say that if God forbid we're pushed to that point, that we're not going to use military action. We would under certain circumstances. But here where our signal to Iran is, let's sit down and see if we can, through dialogue, through diplomacy, get to the right place. If we can, we're prepared to do that. And if we can't, the alternative is not a great alternative. And I need to be clear so everybody understands President Trump's position on this. Iran cannot have a bomb. We cannot allow them to proceed to weaponization and a nuclear arsenal. It cannot happen, and it will not happen.
So look, overall, this isn't like a drastic shift in U.S. policy. A move back towards some sort of monitoring program would have been a drastic shift in the Trump administration in like the last week. That appears to have just been something that was set off the cuff, is kind of my takeaway at this point. But overall, the idea that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and we need to do what we can to make sure they don't get there is pretty consistent U.S. policy over the long term. There's just been a lot of debate about how to actually get to that point. But I think it's pretty safe to say that there hasn't been a U.S. administration in my memory that actually wants Iran to get a nuclear weapon and thinks that that could be a net benefit for us or any of our allies. So the only big change I would say right now is it does look like this administration is pursuing that in a much more aggressive manner. The Iran nuclear question wasn't brought up very much over the last 4 years, hardly at all. Like, it didn't go away, but it wasn't on the forefront of our foreign policy conversation like it is right now. So it does feel like we're moving towards something there, moving towards some sort of solution, hopefully, a peaceful solution, a diplomatic solution, hopefully. But again, we've been talking in recent days how the strikes have picked up against the Iranian-backed Houthis. The U.S. is in the process of moving a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East. It's entirely possible that some sort of military option could be on the table if Iran decides not to dismantle their nuclear program. But I'll put all of the links to these clips in the description below if you want to check those out in their entirety. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.